Well, good evening, everyone. This is it's an evening I've been looking forward to and dreading all at the same time. As probably you are aware at the moment, I typically don't have any trouble speaking in public, or speaking my mind in public for that matter. But tonight I've found myself being a bit concerned that I might not be able to say the things I would like to say in a good way, and at times might not be able to say them at all. So tonight we're gathered at the 16th annual NAIITS Symposium and Summer Institute to commemorate the person and the work of my dear sister, Wendy Peterson, Wendy Boschman Peterson. I think I did the memorial better. I remember Wendy coming back from Churchill, northern Manitoba. I remember this picture she was so pleased with. Up there on the rocks, etched in this place, a memory of her ancestor, of the people who came from the other side of the ocean and together with those who were on this side, gave rise to who Wendy is. And I remember the many times over the years that she would talk about what it meant for her to be a Métis woman, what it meant for her to be an Indigenous woman trying to make her way in a landscape in the educational environment that wasn't always welcoming, either of women or Indigenous people. And so I remember her talking about this journey she wanted to make to this particular place, and it was one of the last major journeys that she took, that was identity related, and I just remember the story and feeling so blessed that she'd found this. So tonight we want to celebrate, commemorate, we want to recognize the work of Wendy Boschman Peterson. And we've got Ed, her hubby of so many years. We've got Corey and Jennifer, and we've got Roger and Melanie, and we've got Marcia and Chad. And we've got best friends, Debbie and Curtis, and a great schoolmate and colleague in her journey in PhD studies, Susie. A good friend, Cheryl. A great friend, Adrian. Good friends of Wendy's in this hall, behind me and around me. And our hope is tonight we can recognize the fact that none of this would be happening. Absolutely none of it, were it not for Wendy. I know that because I happen to have been the face and the voice of this for so many years, people think that without me it would fall apart. I don't know, I've heard people say that, but that's not true. It's been a group of us committed group of us. But there have been a couple of stellar people in this, and this is one of them, Wendy Boschman-Peterson. And that's who we're here to commemorate and whose work we're here to celebrate. This is where we began this thing that we call NAIITS. And you look at this, I want to say auspicious, but because I know each and every one of them, suspicious would be more like it, group of people. And if you'd tracked who each of us had been and the journeys that we'd been on and the things that we'd done, and then projected some imagined potential future for this ragtag group of people, this wouldn't be it. I can't imagine it would be. I don't think any of us thought it was possible to do anything like we've been able to do. And there's Steve Cheramy and Cornelius Buller and Adrian Jacobs and Richard Twiss and Cheryl Bear, Randy Woodley, Ray Aldred, yours truly, and there in the center, the two roses, the young one that we didn't want, thought we could do without, wondered why she'd come. Right beside her was the matriarch, and I say that in all sincerity, the matriarch of NAIITS, who would become the foil of Cheryl Bear on so many occasions down the road. In NAIITS and around NAIITS and in conferences and in gatherings, in our homes where we traveled. And it was interesting because Cheryl had the witch's cry in her laughter. It sounded like the Wicked Witch of the West, cackling over the brew pot. And then there'd be Wendy, and the shrillness of the two laughs put together. At times you wanted earplugs. And those of us who were more testosterone-driven surrounding these two fine roses would often find ourselves at wit's end as to know what to do with the two of them. But here we were, nine friends, 9 colleagues, 9 people with visions, not always the same, not always collated together, setting out on a trail together. And boy, was it a good trail while all of us were journeying together. Wendy's role, apart from attempting, it's probably the one thing she was highly unsuccessful at, attempting to keep Cheryl in line. Wendy's role was really to bring an off-the-wall, out-of-the-box, unimagined bit of humor embedded with an observation of something that the rest of us had missed, but needed a critical eye on. And with her wit and that edgy humor, often buttoning up against Cheryl's idea, she would come up with these interesting, challenging, important ideas for NAIITS. So this is us as we set out on the journey, and as you can tell, I haven't aged a day. Cheryl's really gotten quite old. And here's Wendy, now in the early stages of renewal and restoration, while the rest of us linger, worrying about our wrinkles and our aches and pains. And that's a thrill for me. This is about the time, it's the only photograph I could find that was sort of close to the time that Wendy and I first met. And it was a passing meeting at Providence. I don't think either of us took much notice of the other at that point. Wendy was teaching at Providence College. This one is her Winnipeg Bible College photo, but it was just shortly after this. I couldn't find anything, Ed, I looked. Couldn't find anything that I had that was a little closer, but this was a space where she was beginning to find her stride, I think, in her theological prowess. And I found it intriguing as Wendy and I traveled together in different places, and as we taught together as occasion gave us. I found it interesting. As we talked with people about doing conferences, I found it interesting and disappointing on so many occasions that this incredibly brilliant person with a theological acumen that most of us are completely unaware of, with theological training that was profound, would often be passed over because I was the male in the duo when we went somewhere. We'd sit in a meeting and people would talk about a conference they wanted to do, and they would talk about, hey Terry, would you mind? And Wendy's sitting right there. Wendy was beginning to come into her stride here. And later was going to show us how completely, profoundly she could impact us with insights that most of us wouldn't come up with. So as we taught over the course of the last few years at a few places together in tag team courses like Indigenous Studies, theology, Indigenous Theologies and Methods, a course that we designed together. As we did that, I realized how incredibly astute she was and wished so often to have been able to go back and turn the clock back and be a little bit more forceful with those who bypassed this wonderful theologian in favor of a male yet again. I like this photo. It reminds me of how dedicated Wendy was to us as a NAIITS community, but only because Ed realized this was so important to her. And the tag team of the desire and the willingness to accomplish this. I watched the dance of it. Ed, I watched it so many times when I'd visit, and I realized that in your quiet way, you were just giving so much support to this work she was doing. This is one of the last trips you took. And I remember her talking about how incredibly valuable the trip was for the two of you. And then there was this. And then there was this. Wendy and Adrian had a wonderful capacity to poke and to tease and to prod and to goad one another. And each of them had an equivalent capacity to, at each other's expense, cause the rest of us to laugh and laugh and laugh. I loved that. I loved that in the middle of a profound explanation of something that Wendy had discovered, she'd launch into this repartee with somebody. And oftentimes, if Adrian was with us, it would be with Adrian. So as we hear from different people tonight about Wendy's work, some of it looking at Wendy's dissertation for her PhD, some of it just reflecting on the foundation that she laid for the rest of us to continue to build on. Some listening to Marcy and Chad reflect on Mom. This is sort of the frame that I wanted to put around it for us tonight, just to remember. So, just because you're here, AJ, come on up and talk to us a little bit about Wendy's work, would you?
Can you put the original picture of us all there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This is the Fellowship of the Ring. Steve Sharamy left us. He's the guy on the far right. And then Richard left us. And then Wendy did. And just thinking about Wendy's place in it all, she was the one that put together the journals, took all of our, in my case, hastily written papers, usually done the night before I came and presented, and turned it into something that looked like it was intelligent. And it was her genius in the journals that she was an excellent person to think about the history and to share that history, and her dissertation was about that history. Richard Twiss wrote a history of the contextual movement, and it was from his perspective. He got his doctoral degree in missiology. But when Wendy did the history, she backed up from the local area and she looked at it worldwide. Because this was all a part of a very big movement. It may not have been big in terms of numbers, but I think it's big in terms of its significance. And so she talked about that in her dissertation and how that really throughout the last number of decades, there were kairos moments. Moments that were special moments in time. And the Bible is written from a perspective of kairos moments in time. Significant moments where there are paradigmatic stories, where there are things that happen and decisions made that affect all of human history. And the Christ event is, someone called it the hinge of history, and how that it has affected all of humanity. And so in her dissertation, she looked at many events around the world and many organizations and many people. And the only problem that I have with her dissertation is when she did a whole section on Cheryl Bear. I made a presentation at one of the NAIITS Symposiums called Church of the Sacred Clowns. And I talked about how men don't listen to women and men don't listen to professionals. But men will listen to another man, share his struggle, and will suddenly open up his heart. And I gave illustration after illustration of how people have said to me after I've shared my own struggle in dealing with raising 5 kids on my own, dealing with the tragedies of my involvement with church organizations and denominations. And suddenly people would say, one young man said, he was inspired in a course that I was doing, and I was sharing on the Psalms and how that people are afraid of the Psalms because of the emotion that is there. Anger and joy and sadness and depression and even the anger unto death kind of anger. And I shared my own struggle. And this man said, and I gave him an opportunity to respond to a wisdom scripture and to share their reflections on it. He said, I wrote a song. He says, but I won't sing it to you because I have not, if I sing it to you, I will cry. And it's 34 years since I cried. We took a break, he came back, he sang the song. And it's like a magic key. So I shared that, and I ended that presentation by praying Red Green's prayer. You know, he had Red Green show, and right at the end, he had his men's group. He says, all rise, let's do the men's prayer. I am a man. I can change. If I have to, I guess. And then Cheryl and Wendy got up to kind of field some questions in response to that. And they both chimed in together. We are women, we don't need to change. That's why I think this dissertation is suspect. But I just want to close by saying what she talked about was many events around the world, many people around the world. And her dissertation was all about the gift of sweetgrass, braiding people, events, etc. And how that when you burn sweetgrass, the identity of individual strands are lost in the burning and the rising of smoke, and it becomes a community experience. And she said, in a braid of sweetgrass, just below the tie-off point, all the strands have lost their individuality. They are not easily traced back to the triad in which the individuality of the journey began. Rather, each now is transformed as a part of a collective, similar to an Indigenous concept of community. When the flame ignites the braid, it is quickly blown out, creating the cleansing smoke, the substance of the smudging ceremony. All the strands, now identified in the singular rise as holy or sacred smoke, which is cupped into the recipient's hand and gently directed to prepare the mind, the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the heart, the feet, the whole of the individual, to prepare the smudged person to walk with Creator in a new day. So that is her legacy and what she has given to each of us is lost in our community. But it's still Wendy and the other folks that have passed. They put things into all of us. And when we stand here, it's not just us speaking. It's our community that's speaking. And I'm glad that Wendy was a part of our community. So.
As Wendy pursued her research and as she went from the local to the regional and then the regional to the international, she was tracing a movement of Indigenous peoples in the globe that included the World Christian Gathering on Indigenous Peoples movement in 1996 and forward that brought many of us together internationally. She was including the work that emerged from that in New Zealand, Sam and Thelma Chapman and David and Denise Moko and their children and extended families and others who took on new tasks, new jobs in new ways as a result of that. She was reflecting that this was a global reality that was taking place in the Indigenous world. She talked about the regional things that were happening, regional in Canada, the United States, Australia with Ray Minicon and Sharon and others. Here in North America, it was reflected in a number of ministries that emerged, Wichoni International, that Richard and Catherine Twist founded, that came out of this movement. And Wendy chronicled the impact of this as it moved towards a particular direction. My People International, bringing together Indigenous, local people in ministry, gathering them together, giving them space to do ministry together. And in that space, as they did ministry together, finding that barriers that existed in the past were no longer as consequential as they used to be, and allowing Indigenous people in ministry to engage together in ways they had never done. She chronicled that. It was one of the weaving strands of the sweetgrass. And then she brought it down to people, individuals involved in ministry who had been impacted by this global movement that she called the Reclamation of Culture movement, a movement that encouraged the continued engagement of Indigenous peoples in the globe with their cultural identities, their histories, their languages, their ways of knowing, and so forth, so as to give a foundation on which their faith in Christ, as they embraced him, might be built in a more substantial way. This weaving of these three strands, as Adrian referenced, is an incredible gift to this movement as it chronicled so much of what had taken place over a few decades. It deepened our understanding of what God had been doing in our midst, what our Creator had been undertaking as we matured as a movement and as we journeyed into new territory. So from this ragtag motley crew, motley crew, thank you. From this ragtag crew, some amazing things came, and Wendy chronicled them, but more importantly, Wendy was central to them. So whether it was a conference like this, where Cheryl, you can notice, hams the camera, where we all participated with a range of people to weave these strands and to continue their weaving, central to what we did was Wendy. I mean, she created this conference framework and promoted it, whether it was Thunder Bay or Winnipeg or Regina or the one that we were to do in Regina that Wendy never made because she took her journey. She's central to this stuff. And sadly, she kept Cheryl around. I think all of us had incredibly warm, open, affectionate, genuine, growth and life-giving relationships with Wendy. Friendships that we will never forget. And for me, a sibling, a sister, a big sister, who I would go to time and again, and I would recite the red-green prayer in a different sort of a way. And I'd say to Wendy, and then later, as Sherry became closer to me, to both of them, I'm a man. I don't know what I'm doing here and how it's going to impact the women around me. I need your help. I need you to help me as a very frail man who doesn't understand women, though I've been married to one for almost 48 years. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I'm saying that as a sincerity. I still struggle to crawl outside this testosterone-driven skin to understand what I do and the way it impacts the women around me in my life. I went to Wendy and later to Sherry, and I said, help me with that, would you? That's what Wendy was like for me as a big sister. She just always had sage wisdom, even if all the sage wisdom was to sit with me quietly if I was feeling a little broken, a little frustrated, maybe a bit angry. She helped me a lot, and I needed a big sister a lot of times because I didn't want to burden my lovely wife all the time. Wendy was that. But she was so much more in some ways to Cheryl. They shared a lot of repartee and annoyed the heck out of most of us at times, but she was a huge nurturing, caring big sister to Cheryl. Come on up, Cheryl. Hop along, I should say.
Do you need help?
She just did this to get attention, you know.
Okay.
Are you the cat or the sister today?
I'm going to share a few words on behalf of Cheryl the cat. Oh, dear Wendy. I will explain that story in a bit for those of you who the inside joke. When I first met Wendy, it was through the EFC roundtable. And I think she had been at a Many Nations One Voice at one point, but I hadn't met her there. So we met in this. And when I saw her, I thought, oh my goodness, this woman is like, she's regal. She's so well put together, and she just looks like so professorial and professional. And I was a little intimidated because I was, at this point in my life, I was in my late 20s. And so I was kind of like a little nervous. And I was hanging out with, on the round table at that time was Terry, Adrian, Ray, and a few others. Mavis, Etienne, and of course Wendy and I. And Wendy, and this was like, I had joined the old boys club. I didn't realize that, but it was all sort of like the Indians in Canada who, well-known folks, and they had worked together for a long time. So they were already like a crew, and I was kind of like let me in your clique, dang it. So I always had this sort of, intimidation of Wendy, but I saw like the humor and everything else and the camaraderie. And I think the reason why Wendy and I became such good friends is because of something, maybe just the humor. So I'm going to share it with you. I think I talked to Wendy and Terry about this, but I don't know if any of you have heard it before. So we were talking, we were going to go on a break at the task force, and this picture, incidentally, was taken in Ottawa. We had either just met former Prime Minister Paul Martin, or we were just about to, so that's why we're so snazzy there. But at one of these meetings, we were taking a break, and Wendy, I forgot the context of what it was, but she said, well, you just got to be, she's talking to Terry, so it was just Wendy, Terry, you got to be nose forward. And I said, well, it's better than ass backwards. And she didn't react, and I didn't know her, remember, at all. So Terry busts a gut laughing, but Wendy's reaction was just this. And that's it, right? She just kind of sat up a little bit, straightened her spine, and then she looked at me, and I was like, oh crap, you know, I'm dead. And that's honestly, after that, we became like the best of friends, and we were walking one time, and we can never give a compliment without, you know, a little bit of a side swipe. So I was like, she was wearing some sandals, and I was like, man, look at you, got such nice feet. And then she was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, oh, well, for an 80-year-old, of course, this is 10, 15 years ago, whatever. But lots of fun. And so her work in my life was as a mentor. And I always called her my evil twin. I said, oh my goodness, how can you be the same age as my mom and like, yet I feel like you're my age? And I even one time asked her, I was like, how's your kids? She's like, oh, they're good. And I'm like, how old are they again? And she told me, like, oh, they're my age. And I was like, how's your, so silly. But that was how, like, when Wendy could just relate to anyone. So I remember at the last NAIITS last year in Nova Scotia, and she was talking to some young people, and they were just sort of basking in her light, and they just felt welcomed, and they felt good to be there after Wendy had spoken with them and welcomed them into kind of the NAIITS circle. And I was kind of watching that, and I was like, dang, she's really good at that. She really knows what she's doing. And she certainly did that with me, really helped me along the way with that humor. She talked to me a lot about, we talked about life and different things. On that EFC council, I talked about losing my uncle when I was 5 years old, and just all of the different deaths that happened in my life, and I was still pretty raw at that point. And she really cared about that. She really cared. Every time she saw me, she asked me how my kids were. She always remembered. She was so thoughtful. And at the right moment, she would be just so interested in caring about my kids and stuff. And one of my sons is having a particularly tough time. And she used to say, you know what? It's going to be okay. There's hope. There's always hope. And that was really, really helpful. And yeah, she just was, I used to tell her, I said, yeah, you're my evil twin, but you're also like the mother I never wanted. We had so many laughs. I mean, sometimes we would just be laughing until our stomachs hurt. And then we stayed last year in Nova Scotia. Terry, Bev, Wendy, and I at an Airbnb, and I remember Bev saying afterwards, she never laughed so much. so we just had so much fun. And I've got to explain before I sit down. I've got to explain the cat. So there was a little stray cat that was hanging around their house, and Wendy said to Ed, and of course, Ed is really the opposite of Wendy. He's really kind, quiet, good Christian, good. Supportive. Gotcha. Anyway, so the cat and she's like, don't feed that cat because it's gonna hang around. Ed fed the cat. Don't bring the cat into the garage. And it was winter time. Ed brought the cat into the garage. And she says, don't let the cat in the house. The cat's in the house. And so she said she took to naming it Cheryl. And this stray cat that was so needy and all clingy, yes. And I laughed and I laughed. And oh, that was just those kind of things. So, okay, sorry, I did have another thought about heaven. So the Indigenous view of heaven is very different from kind of the heaven that we think about. And also, Greek philosophy is very different from Hebrew philosophy, ancient Greek, ancient Hebrew philosophy. Greek philosophy is so much that like there's heaven and it's got to be way, way up there because the earth and flesh and all of that matter is sinful. And then those two things, heaven and earth, I mean heavens and the spirit world, and it's so good it can't touch the earth or it'll be tainted. So we had the Gnostics and all of that who said Jesus couldn't have had a body because it was flesh, right? And he was God. So that's, but some of that thinking, the Greek thought, we have adopted some of that because a lot of our stuff is the Greek philosophy. It's impacted a lot of the Western world. I'm not teaching a class on this. Shh. So this thing that about the heaven is so far up there, like it has to be like in the atmosphere. It can't be in space because that would be weird, right? We're not going to go that far. But yet all of us think, in Canada and the US, we think about heaven as up there. But it's not Hebrew thought. Hebrew thought is that the dimension of spirit world and matter and earth is much closer, and it actually does this. And that's ancient Hebrew. It's also Indigenous thought. So this world that we're living in, you know, it's one of those ways, it's one of the things that sometimes as Christians we can take our mind off of the earth and we can say the earth is going to burn anyway, so we don't need to think about it. What if that fire is a refining fire? What if it's, you know, there's other ways that we can, and then in the Revelation, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. And I hope I get to go to new earth. But I think it's very close. And so when we as Indigenous people talk about ancestors, Terry years ago said, just set me free when he said the words, let's call ancestors the great cloud of witnesses. And it just set me free. Like, yes, they're witnessing, they're close. And it really helped me to think in those kind of terms because I have a lot more folks on the other side that I've lost. Lots. Being Indigenous, being a product of the history of colonization, working through decolonization. It's tough, it's messy. There's so much grief. And I know Wendy would. We were there. Debbie and I were with Wendy in Paris, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, Wendy was one of the ones who walked me through, in a lot of ways, a lot of the deaths that we experience as our friends and different ones. And I was like, I know she's probably like, oh no, this is going to be a tough one. It's a tough way to go, but I'm grateful for her life. I'm grateful that we were able to be there to walk her over, in a sense, to just kind of hang on to her a little bit in her last moments. And I'm grateful for her adventurous spirit, that she showed us how to live. She showed us how to die. And she did everything with such class, such grace. So thank you, Peterson family, for lending her to us so many times. I know it was a sacrifice for you guys. She was gone a lot. She was hanging out with us. She was in South Africa with us one time. Oh my goodness. And she told me, okay, one last story, I promise. Give me my crutches. I'll even be, so Terry, she came up to us and she said, and this is funny because I have fallen today, so it's actually, I shouldn't tell this story.
Go ahead.
I'm walking myself into my own trap. So Wendy came up and she goes, "You're not going to believe this, but I fell down." Or she said, "No, Terry fell down today." She says he was walking and all of a sudden he was down. She's like, "That's really strange because he never usually does that." And I was like, "Oh, I hate it when old people fall." No, today. taking the water.
Do you need some help, old person?
So I'm not on the original picture of the founders, but it was very shortly after that I got to meet or be part of the NAIITS board. But I actually met Wendy a few years previous to that. I was a young student at Providence and entering a world where I didn't realize that there was this whole men-women divide in the church, because I was kind of new to the church context, and so I didn't realize that men or women shouldn't really speak up in theology classes or Old Testament classes, especially since there was this she was younger then, there was this lady in the front that always had her hand up. Always interjecting and almost having this one-on-one dialogue with Gus Conkle at that time. And my first impression of Wendy, even before I knew her name, was, my goodness, what a keener. As I got to know Wendy, I realized she really is a keener. She loved learning. She loved just, everywhere we would go, we went to Portland, and the first thing she did was go down to that big, huge bookstore and spent hundreds of dollars in books, and I'm sure you have supplied the NAIITS library, so thank you very much for your contribution through Wendy. She was constantly buying books and just loved the smell of books to begin with, but just found her a happy place in there. And as I read Wendy's dissertation, I actually have it, I don't even know if I have the final copy. I have the copy that she tried sending, and I have all the edit notes on the side, which is a treasure for me to have those. She kept trying to send it we were at our NAIITS retreat, and her paper was due in for final comment, and she couldn't get it sent. And so she tried her computer, then she tried mine, and she still struggled through. We sent a different edition, sent it through, and finally it went through. She was a little stressed that moment. So as I read her dissertation, there were a couple things that struck me. Because Wendy, as much as she lived life out here, she was totally integrated. And if you've read her dissertation, she talks about the braid of sweetgrass. And I would actually say her braid of sweetgrass more looks like, if I can do it, like this. Actually, that's not very good. Like this. If you know, she was Métis, and it was so integrated in her life. I would say this is how she would have braided that sweetgrass. But the braid of sweetgrass, it was inclusive in that, and Debbie and I were talking about how she drew these three strands, the regional, the global, and the local together. And she did it so seamlessly and almost effortlessly, because not only had she experienced, but she lived that. And she was inclusive in that way. And we see throughout her dissertation, she had pockets of people globally around the world, lives that she touched and lives that touched her. And she wanted to make sure that they were included. And so in her dissertation throughout it, she includes many of these voices. And wherever Wendy went, she invited people in. And so if you went for dinner with Wendy, it was you and 50 other people. But she invited people in to laugh either with her or at her. She had an incredible sense of humor, which we've heard about, and a brilliant, sharp wit. And my husband and I had the privilege of going to the World Christian Gathering with her in Israel. And it was the first time my husband really had any connection with the NAITS community at all. And one of the first people he met was Wendy, and he didn't want to leave her side. He found her wit just phenomenal. And he was here earlier today, but sadly he had to go. And so just very warm and inviting. It was significant that she was with us at that World Christian Gathering because I have Salvation Army background, so I was never baptized by water, and so I asked to be baptized by water. And we have a picture of Wendy sitting up in a tree taking pictures of us. And she videotaped the whole thing because she knew how significant it was for us. We never asked her to do that. She was just so thoughtful that she would climb a tree. I wanted to call her Zacchaeus after that, but this braid of sweetgrass, as I know, she brings people together. And even today, that legacy continues. She continues to bring people all over. That inclusion also, and Terry acknowledged this, included the female voice. For those of you that this medicine might be new to, within my tradition, the sweetgrass braid is the men's medicine. And I thought to myself, oh, the audacity of Wendy to use the men's medicine in her dissertation. She found a way to include the female voice with the male voice in there. Even in her own denomination that didn't always celebrate female leadership, Wendy found a way to express her voice. And I'd say she didn't really get offended. She may have made fun of you after for what you said or how you said it, but she always made sure to include even those people that might have said offensive things. And she had such a grace about her in doing that. She wanted to make sure that that female voice was always included. And as a female scholar, I think that is an incredible gift to us as women, who are, in many of our communities, the life carriers. And so we continue that life for us. We've already mentioned her humor. And this is probably one of the things that I continue to remember. I have this video. Has anybody ever seen Don Burnstick? No? Well, if you haven't, after this, you need to go watch the video. Because he has a little video, and it's called The 5 Ways Native Women Laugh. And one day we were sitting, it was at a NAIITS conference, we were up late, and we're sitting in bed, and I said, oh, Wendy, got to show you this video. You know, I've shown it with other Indigenous women, and no matter what, it always happens. Just as he says the next way, he has 5 ways, you know, the first thing that we do is, does anybody know? Tilt our head back, you know. And so he has these little 5 steps, and so he walks through this, and I said, Wendy, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. And you know, she goes, oh, I don't think this applies to everybody. And I said, well, you're Métis, I'm sure it does. So we sat down on the bed, and literally just seconds before he described the next step, there's Wendy doing it. And so she's like hitting me and slapping me and falling off the bed. And we're laughing and tears streaming down our face. And so I said, if you have not seen that video, you need to see it. And if you can picture yourself, Wendy, doing those actions, you get a little picture of who she is. So. It's a joy, not only that she had great sense of humor, but that she was an incredible scholar. And she was a role model for me. When she got sick, she almost gave up. And she asked quite a few of us, should I keep going? Should I finish it? Should I finish it? And I remember sitting with her, and I said, Wendy, this is not about you finishing it. It's about me, actually. And I said, I want to have an Indigenous scholar to be able to be one of my, the word's gone from me, supervisors. I want female voices And so, I still have a female voice. I'll have to suffice with a male, maybe, perhaps. But that was significant for me. And I said to her, this is not just about you, this dissertation. This is about the legacy and the generations of female scholars to come. And I'm excited to see female scholars coming. And although that first picture of the NAIITS board is very male or heavy, I was gonna say, they might be heavy, but
Some of us were.
there were a lot of men in that picture. It's exciting to see that when we had our NAIITS board meeting, we had the majority females. And I would contribute that to Wendy in her very quiet way, always saying, we need that female voice. So, bless you, Wendy, and we pray that we'll walk in a good way.
This is about where Wendy would have several very astute observations on technology. And we need those astute observations at this moment. There we go. So this is Wendy sharing identity, camaraderie with Sherry. I remember that picture. Yeah. We've heard some conversation about Wendy's contributions. In some respects, this will linger as one of the more significant material contributions that Wendy has made over the years to the NAIITS community, and through the NAIITS community to countless numbers of researchers who will follow, particularly women scholars, I believe. From its very inception, Wendy has been was the singular editor of the NAIITS Journal, published annually, going forward now into its 16th volume. She edited with diligence, with a passion, a fervor to do it as well as she knew how to do it, to make it a centerpiece for what we were accomplishing together at NAIITS, to ensure that people knew that we could do good stuff here at NAIITS, that we may be Indigenous, but we could do good stuff. And so she edited this thing with patient diligence. And you can imagine the amount of work it would take, because 9 chances out of 10, the submissions that she would get for the journal coming out of the symposiums wouldn't be complete, would have a very oblique reference to some footnote somewhere that didn't exist in any published work anywhere, couldn't be found in any report issued by anyone, could not be traced back to an interview held by any 2 parties. And Wendy would have to track it down. And she did, to the very, very, very best of her ability. She would take a napkin-written presentation. And I'm seriously not joking too much on this. A napkin-written presentation along with some notes cobbled together, and over the course of some months, work with the presenter to whip it into a printable fashion. And she did it because she loved to see scholarly work in print, but also the work of our community practitioners who didn't write professional papers. She just loved to see it in print. Volume 11, Volume 12, Volume 13, and Volume 14. These are the last 4 journals that Wendy fully edited and contributed to the work, the published works of NAIITS and its community. These were her masterpieces. She talked of these last 4 as being her best work over the years. And I was always very proud of taking these to different places and seeing them move forward into the hands of students who would learn through their pages. Right on the cusp of Wendy's journey last fall, she had spoken just months before with the American Theological Libraries Association, who had approached her and us about indexing the NAIITS journals so that they would be available through ATLA. And they're all indexed. They're all in the ATLA, A Dream Come True. This is Wendy's lasting legacy to scholarship going forward. She'd also talked about how to hand it off to the next generation. How do we do that, she said. And we talked about it, and we thought we knew who were the right people in the NAITS community to do that. One was Kimberly Medicine Horn Jackson. Kimberly, do you want to come up? And the other was Danny Zacharias. Danny? And these 2 NAITS scholars and faculty are the new editorial team for the NAITS journals.
First thing I want to say is I didn't hear about the story about the napkin and chasing down the footnotes, so I want to offer my resignation right now. I also want to say we've been picking on Cheryl a lot, and I know you all find her annoying, but I just want you to know that she is tolerable in small doses. So just keep that in mind. As a person who didn't go through NAITS as a student and came late as a faculty member, I knew Wendy the least of the faculty. And so as I've reflected on my role, I'm aware that I'm filling big shoes. As you can tell, they're very big shoes because we need 2 of us to do it. And but I'm also really aware, and I want to recognize that the work that she was doing, the hard work and the time and the effort, not only on the journal but just on NAITS as a community, was for people like me who would come in and be here for the long haul. So I recognize that, even though I didn't get to know her as well as I wish I had. And just one little story as well that I was pleasantly surprised by as I was watching. I believe that was the Celebration of Life that was recorded. Is that right? Yeah. And as I was watching that, and all of a sudden, a childhood friend got up and started speaking and then singing Donna Mero, who I grew up with. And I quickly talked to him after, and I said, "How did you know Wendy?" And so it was just a funny story and a great connection. And I got to hear how they got to know one another. And I still recall as he was talking to me, and he said, after we met, she became fierce friends for us. And so I recognize that that's her legacy for those. And so I just want to say that for the family and for the community, that I'll do my best to really work to honor her memory and work as hard as she did, because I recognized she was preparing the way for someone like me.
Well, it's a load off my mind that I'm not going to be the one to chase down those footnotes since Danny's already committed to doing that. But I remember last year's symposium, and Wendy said to me, I want to talk to you about maybe editing the NAIITS journal. And what a wonderful surprise that is. What an honor that is to even be in the discussion of the possibility of that. And this NAIITS journal is so important. It helps get our thoughts and our voices out to a wider arena of people who cannot be here holding this time and space as we do every year. And so I feel a sense of honor and responsibility that she thought this was something that we'd be able to do together. I remember a few years ago, before I graduated from the NAIITS program, I was taking a theology class that Ray Aldridge was teaching. And if you ever have the opportunity to learn from Ray, I highly recommend it. But this particular class, Wendy popped in, and she was going to spend a few minutes teaching some concept to us. What I heard was a woman who was very knowledgeable and very passionate about the topic she was teaching us about. And she had a keen wit and a passion and an energy that just seemed to light up the room. It made the learning experience more than just learning. And it was powerful, and I was thankful to have taken part in that. I'm thankful for the gift of Wendy. And I remember also one symposium in Wheaton, and we decided to go out to eat after the symposium was finished for the day. And I don't know who started laughing in the van, but pretty soon we were all laughing, and we didn't know which direction to go, right or left, or maybe we should just turn around and start back from the beginning. And we finally found a parking spot. Wendy was driving. We finally found a parking spot, and I think it probably took us 10 to 15 minutes or more just to get out of the car. So she taught me, the gift that she gave me was to not take myself too seriously in any situation. And that is of such value. And I'm so thankful for the gift that Wendy was and that she continues to be, because we carry us with her. We carry her with us in our hearts and in the work that we continue to do.
Well, you heard Kimberly reference Wendy's driving skills, her navigation skills. I was reflecting on this the other day a little bit, and was ever so grateful that we are translated from this life to the presence of the Lord, and that we don't have to drive. I'd be a bit concerned about her arrival. Whenever Wendy was in a group of people, regardless of where it was, you could be guaranteed that it wasn't going to be straight up serious, that there was going to be something to cause us to break out in a laugh, and in Cheryl's case, a cackle, and enjoy one another's company in a way that up to that point we perhaps hadn't. Here we are at a very serious NAIITS symposium and taking a picture of the folks who'd gathered, and we all got together, and this was an idea that Wendy offered us, and we agreed to, and later thought to ourselves, why would we pose in such a stupid fashion if it wasn't for Wendy?
And she's like posing straight.
I know. It was sort of the 1, 2, 3, give it, and everybody did but her. That was Wendy woman. Wendy had lots of friends because she made them everywhere. You've already heard that if you got an invite to dinner, several people that hadn't been on the initial conversation about being invited to the dinner that you were invited to would appear. And inevitably, Ed would be called at work and told to pick something up because we got some folks here for dinner. Oh, by the way, Ed, would you mind picking up? Oh, someone's arriving at the airport, Ed. I remember on a few occasions Ed coming to pick me up at the Winnipeg airport, and I'm quite sure I would have asked, what are you doing here? Wendy told me, come and pick you up. And I'd get to Wendy and Ed's place and there'd be a house full. Just because Wendy loved to be around people. Just enjoyed being around people. Two of those very special friends, Curtis and Debbie Cron, are here, and Deb, why don't you come on up? Kurt, are you coming too, Kurt? Okay. Friends everywhere, and this was one of the best.
Chad had to help me remember the other day when I first met Wendy, which I think was probably in the mid to late 80s. It seems like forever since I've known her, and every day that I look out of my kitchen window and look over across the way, it is incredibly unreal to think she is not in that office study of hers working on her PhD or editing some journal that I heard so much about. Wendy was a great gatherer of people. She had many people in her life, but I think one of the gifts that she gave to me was all of you. Because every time she came home from one of these adventures of a symposium or an adventure such as the World Gathering, I would hear all about it. For the next several coffee times, she would have one more anecdote to tell me about, or one more story of an individual, of an incredible person who she had met. And so in this way, I have come to know many of you, although we may have never met. It's one of those gifts, I think, that she also gave, the storytelling from the mid-'80s to now, the gift she gave of me being, I guess, on this journey of what I now know to be decolonization. But Wendy, I'm not finished yet. You can't really be gone yet. But she is, and so we carry on. But at the same time, I recognize that she has put in my life these many connections, and I know that some of them are beginning in a new way, and for that I am truly grateful. Wendy was many things to many people in Steinbach, and some of these things you may be quite unaware of, and so those are the things that I'd like to touch on. One of them is her love for her home community to grow, and her home community to be built up. And so she was also very concerned about the children and youth and families of Steinbach. In 2009, there were 11 of us women that got together, and we started what's called a giving circle. And this giving circle, we each contributed $1,000, and then on the interest on that, we give away grants each year to nonprofits in Steinbach. So that was 2009, and there were 11 of us. So in 2010, I thought, well, Wendy would love to be a part of this group. So I invited her to join us, and she was very enthusiastic, very quick to jump in. She thought this was a great idea, but then proceeded to chastise me for not inviting me in 2009, because then she could have been one of the founding members. Oh, Wendy. Wendy was also very much a community person in the sense that when she got her diagnosis of cancer, she invited her birthday group. Her birthday group consisted of probably like 9 or 10 of us who would gather regularly to celebrate each other's year of birth. And so when she got the diagnosis, she emailed or she called each one of us and said, I need to talk to you. So she gathered us around that evening and she told us of her diagnosis in community. So on the day of her first chemo treatment, we gathered around her and sat with her and found ways to find humor on that day as well, because that is what you do with Wendy. I was privileged to be considered to come along and celebrate or roast Cheryl's birthday last fall. Wendy asked if I would come through an invitation from Cheryl as well. So one day we were sitting in her house and kind of going over some of the details. We were going to go a week early so that we could be over jet lag by the time the rest of the old ladies got there, and we would be in fine form and the rest of them would be struggling with jet lag. No, she wasn't competitive at all. So while we were there, she got a phone call and I could hear her on the phone. She's going, yeah, I'm going with Debbie Cron. Yeah, she's my palliative care nurse. I'm going on a trip with my palliative care nurse. Ha, ha, ha. Little did we know that I would be there with her in her final journey. Wendy had, so just to back up a little bit, I've been doing this work in palliative care for the last 13, 14 years, and I've journeyed with many people in their last days. Some of them are quite remarkable. It's a beautiful journey, and some of them are pretty difficult, and you may be familiar with some of those stories. So when we were traveling, Wendy, there was no indication that she was ever ill. She was in fine form. We just enjoyed each other's company. We had adventures together. One of the things I quickly learned about her was that, she did not have a sense of navigation and direction, which you guys didn't actually tell me about. You did not warn me about this before I went on that trip with her. We were coming from Bordeaux to Arcachon on the train one time, and I was observing what a beautiful night this was because I could see the full moon, and Wendy was chattering to me, so I didn't want to interrupt and comment about it, so I didn't. But when we were stepping out of the train station, she commented to me, "Oh, look, there's the moon." And I'm going, "What?" I was pretty sure the moon was over there. And I said, "No, Wendy, that's not the moon. In fact, the closer I looked at it, I could see there was like a shadow logo on there." And I'm going, "No, there's a logo in there. That's not the moon." "Yes, Debbie, that's the moon." One thing Wendy did not lack was confidence. And I fell prey to that. And I started second-guessing myself. So I'm looking at this thing, I'm going, "Wendy, I'm pretty sure that's not the moon." "Yes, Debbie, that's the moon. What is wrong with you?" So I thought, well, one way to figure this out is I went into the middle of that parking lot and I turned around where I thought the moon would be. Yep, sure enough, there was the moon. I said, "Wendy, get over here." And she looked up and she just burst out laughing and she said, "Wow, it's the night of the two moons." So in Paris, we had a couple of good days together as women. And the morning when we could see that something was not quite right with Wendy, I just thought I'd share this briefly with you because I know that many of you, this came as a shock and she is near and dear to you. I'm not going into details, but I just wanted you to know a few little things. She deteriorated very quickly. I don't think she ever knew how serious it was. She basically fell asleep in the emergency room where Cheryl and I were. As we could see that she's losing consciousness, Cheryl is in the room, and I am so grateful you were there, Cheryl. And Cheryl said, "Debbie, we need to pray over Wendy in the Indigenous way. We need to call her family into the room with us. And so Cheryl took the time to pray, and she gathered her loved ones into the room with her. And you know, as she did that, I could feel Wendy squeezing my hand. And she just kind of went to sleep after that. I don't think she ever realized fully how serious this was, but I also could reflect on this later and know Wendy had a beautiful, beautiful passing. She did not suffer indignities, she did not suffer pain. She had a few hours of wondering, I'm feeling a bit off. But I know that her Creator extended a tremendous gift to her, and for that I am so grateful. Going forward here, I am bereft. This beautiful person who brought so many stories and life into my life is no longer able to share those things. But I hope that going forward, some of you will maybe just connect with me. I'd love to hear your stories, and maybe we can be friends. Thank you.
Navigation. You know, I always like to say that I'm probably the only Indian that can't draw. Couldn't do a picture to save my soul. And I'm glad that's not a prerequisite to get into heaven. I think Wendy's probably the only Métis who couldn't be out on a boat and find her way. Probably the only Métis. Well, then there's David Skeen. Chad and Marcy, do you want to come up?
Okay. I'm Marcia Peterson. I am the daughter-in-law of Wendy Peterson. Anybody who has met my mother-in-law has probably been, at least momentarily, been taught by her. She lived and breathed her teaching, and she didn't want to waste any opportunity to teach. Even if that person wasn't receptive to teach, she would teach. Even if that person wasn't ready for what she had to say, she would teach. And if that person she was teaching was a debater, well, then she was just thrilled. So I thought I would talk about a few of the things that she's taught me. One of the things she taught early on when Chad and I were still dating was the love of the land. In summer of 1995, Mom, Dad, Chad, and I, we rented a boat to see the land. This was the land that she was part of her childhood fun and some craziness with her Auntie Evie, and she had a great cackle, and just that joy attached to that land. And she got me to fall in love with that area that our cabin now sits on. The other land that we both love, and as we were dating, she was just thrilled to know that I grew up in Charleswood just like she did. And she thought this was a wonderful coincidence. And, and so love being by the Assiniboine River was definitely shared by the both of us. And she took many, many opportunities to go on adventures with me and the kids, and go to the zoo, go to the greenhouses all by the river, go to restaurants by the river, to smell the river, to be by the trees there. And I would always say yes, I would go. But one of the other things that she would draw me by were also the graveyards. This would be, the next point would be more her researching and her learning and writing things down and all about her heritage, her family heritage, and she was pulling me into that as well. I wanted to know the family story for my husband and for my kids. I soaked this up. I loved to hear her stories. I relished this time with her by the river, in the graveyard, stepping over stones, reading them, taking pictures of them. And I knew she was writing and she was learning about things as we went around. She pulled me further into her researching in the past year or two with reading books to further understand the hows and the whys of how the British would treat their wives and their daughters. And she would hand me book after book. And after I devoured it, then she would want to pick my mind and point out different ideas. And she seemed very pleased when I would pull out what she did out of the book. And at this point, I already understood my professor mother-in-law, and I looked for and I tried to remember the things that I knew she would be looking for. Another thing she taught me was to know your mind, to truly know it, and be able to back up your opinion a few different ways, or else don't say a thing. Because the debating professor mother-in-law, she would challenge you and check you out, and she would want to either change your mind or make you mad, or suddenly you would just have to know your opinion. She taught and she role modeled for not just to me, but to my kids, that you're never too old to learn. I remember giving her a bag of school supplies chosen by my kids before starting school in Kentucky for her doctorate. Food from one, pencils and paper from another, and fun things from another, along with pictures and drawings, letters. Oh, and she just laughed, and she laughed. She thought it was so funny for us taking her to the airport and that her grandkids would be sending her off to school. She also taught me mercy, love, generously giving to the fatherless. Looking up and learning about her family, amazing family tree, really intrigued me, and I wanted to soak up as much as possible for my own family. But there were sad stories too. And the stories were of families in her tree that grew up fatherless. And Mom was no different, as she grew up without a father figure in her life. It seemed to spur her on to go above and beyond for broken families, especially for the mothers and their children. And she did this in very hands-on ways, as well as being a part of that amazing group that Debbie talked about. And now she's a part of with the Debbie's group, being the leader, and the first one being the Legacy Fund, the first one in that fund group after her passing. I'm going to miss her teachings as I walk through gardens. Maybe some water. Drink tea and reheat tea. I'll be thinking of her then too. I'm going to miss making tortilla, her wonderful meat pie, and I'm going to miss sitting with her and watching my kids and just enjoying her, being amazed at them and having her join me in that amazement of all of her grandchildren. And I'm going to miss being handed a book purposely chosen for me to teach me something. She was very good at that. Or being told story after story about her amazing friends. I wrote this in my journal, so the emotion was obviously pouring out of me, and I ended with a prayer. So if you'd join me in prayer. Dear God, thank you for all the years that Mom taught and all the people that she helped grow with words and ideas and wisdom. Help us to continue in your amazing strength, ready to help others and ready to lift people up the way Mom did. Amen.
Sure. Thanks, great. Thank you.
Sorry.
Hey, my name is Chad Peterson. I'm son of Wendy and Ed, and brother to Melanie and Corey, husband to Marcia, and father to 4 wonderful children. I was asked to share a story about my mother. Those of you who knew her were aware of her ability to poke fun at herself after she did something really silly. So I'll tell you one of those stories because it cracks me up. This story happened a few years back. She probably told some of you this story because she thought it was so funny that she did such a silly thing, and she loved to laugh at her own antics. This story came to mind as I was out with my eldest daughter, Sarah, and my youngest son, Johannes. We were taking our van through the automatic car wash, and we all remembered Grandma telling the story and started laughing. My mom was going through an automatic car wash and didn't realize that she had the sunroof open. So it didn't take her long for her to realize her mistake, but she completely panicked. Instead of simply pressing a button and closing the sunroof, she was frantically trying to shield herself from the typhoon being dumped on her head. After trying various objects like paper, for example, she ended up finding an umbrella. So she was able to deploy this inside the vehicle. And this, of course, did not stop the water from coming into the vehicle, but and I think there's still a slight water stain on the headliner of that van, so good thing was that she had a nice shiny skin afterwards, thanks to turtle wax. Some of you wondering if I did the same thing. So water just beat it off her. It was remarkable. Yes. I know many of you would have similar stories you could tell on my mother. Her sense of humor often came out in conversations, and often it was humor at her own expense. So that's something I really appreciated about her. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for honoring my mother. Her life work and her passion up to her dying day was for her people. One could hardly have a conversation without the subject of the injustices done to her people becoming a dominant part of the conversation. She grew up in her family's land in Charleswood, and she remembered the racism against her family and any of mixed blood, and remembered how her family would hide their racial identity in order to fit in with their local community. This practice is still going on today with her family. This was one of the driving forces behind her work, and as you can read in her dissertation, spread worldwide as she, through her research, discovered how her family story was very common throughout the colonized world. I would especially like to thank the community of NAIITS. You gave her the family that she never had, even though there are many of you to thank individually. I'll focus on two of you in particular. First of all, Terry, thank you for being her brother. This was missing in her life, and I know she was grateful to you. When I first met you, I could see the genuine care you had for her and really appreciated your openness and sincerity. You have a lot of God-given wisdom, and I know that you will continue to offer your talents and skills in your ongoing ministry. She was and would still be very proud to know you and to serve alongside of you. Secondly, I would like to thank Mom's evil twin, Cheryl Bear. Even though you were years apart in age, not sure how the twin thing worked, but you had a close sisterly bond. You were the sister she needed. I love the way that even though it appeared to everyone that you're constantly fighting and that you hated each other, you two were very close and not really fighting. It was more of a teasing, making fun of, and a mean kind of friendship. Yeah. Complicated, right? Yeah. I remember laughter and lots of it whenever you two were together. And I remember sometimes being surprised that my mom would be involved in such rhetoric, but then quickly realized it was all in fun. I was, and still I'm happy that my mom had such an open, good friendship with you. As I mentioned, there are many others that had an enormous impact on her life. I would like to thank all of you. She had many, many stories of time spent with a lot of different people and was so blessed by the conversations and friendships that came out of these times. I suppose I could be here for days trying to individually mention everybody that, that had an impact on her. As I read through her work, I kept thinking that I was a result of the assimilation policies of our government, as was my mother and sister. I must not let these policies succeed. I need to honor my forefathers and remember their ways, care for the land, and care about the injustices that continually plague our nation. My prayer is that her work and NAIITS' work would continue, that the races would be reconciled, that Indigenous peoples worldwide would be healed and respected as equals, that treaties would begin to be honored, and that our Indigenous population would not be lied to anymore. So that's about it. Thank you for listening.
Your mom's proud of
Where would you like us?
Just right there's good.
Valerie, would you come up?
Here, Dad.
AJ.
So that wonderful lady, wife to Ed, mother to Chad and to Melanie, mother-in-law to Marcy, Roger, mother to Corey, mother-in-law to Jen. Wonderful woman. I hope and pray that you've heard, and we could say a lot more, all of us, you've heard how much this wonderful lady has impacted this community and how much we love and appreciate that you did lend her to us so many times. This sash, I hope, will be a symbol of how much she also drew your family together on so many different occasions. Whether to teach, to make fun of herself so that it would cause people to laugh. I pray that it would be a part of your family's remembrance of the deep, deep impact Mom made, your mom-in-law made, your wife made in this community and around the globe. So I'm going to invite Adrian to pray over you as we finish this part of our time together. Thank you for coming and allowing this community to share this time with you.
Can we all stand? Our Creator, we just thank you for the fact that we have come from the earth. The wisdom has arisen from the earth, and it has given us our lives. And Wendy, her body was made of the dust of the ground and arose from the earth, born into this world, born into community. And we celebrated and talked about that, and we're so thankful for that time of the gift that we were able to share. And thank you for Ed, for having the wisdom to connect with that wisdom that was brought. And that wisdom produced the genius that's here, and introduced that to our community. And we laughed, and we smiled, and we cried, and we learned. We were encouraged. We were hugged. We were helped by that genius. And now the earth has her now and holds her body. It's been returned to that. And we're thankful for that. Thankful that we're cared for in this cycle of life. And we pray that the family continually feel that care and that love and that gift that came from Wendy and has been given to each one of them and to all of us as a community. And we just thank you that you watch over us. Jesus, you said you are a shepherd. You're the bishop of our souls, the overseer of our souls, and that you will continue to oversee us. And thank you for everything that we have been able to cherish in the NAIITS community and the work that she has done here. And thankful for the family that gave of themselves in giving their family member to our work here. And we're thankful, forever thankful for that. And glad that that your word says that the good work that has begun in us, you will bring it to completion. And we're thankful for that. We just agree together for the comfort as we go forward and the grace of God through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please be seated. Watch that old lady doesn't fall. Last year at our symposium, we had Jonathan Miracle with us for a concert evening. And Wendy's fondest hope for this one was that we'd invite Michael Jacobs, who's been a friend to this community for as many years as I can recall, to come and share music with us. And so tonight, in honor of Wendy and her keenness to have Mike here, even though we don't particularly care for his music, we're going to take just a little bit of a hiatus here while the tech guys set up a couple of mics and so on. So enjoy just a chat with your neighbor and maybe a bit of a reflection on the impact that Wendy has had in your life. And if you're just new to this community, that impact is carried by those of you in this community or those of us in this community who have known her and experienced her blessing. So take a few minutes to do that, and then we'll have Mike come and share with us. I could do that right now. Well, yeah, no. I'll do it as I introduce. I'll do it when I introduce Mike. No, it doesn't matter. Did you spit in that one? No. Oh, well, spit in it and then I'll know for sure.
whole hour, do you? Considering the time. Well, that's okay. I'm here to serve you, you know. So how about I'll do 3-4 songs, is that all right? Okay. Oh, yeah. Here to serve. This is about me.
Can we keep the picture up? Yeah? Sure.
Well, you might just for fun.
That's fine. No.
Because the other thing I was going to do was put him on the screen bigger. But if you want the picture, just get it.
No, that's good. Okay.
Okay. Oh. Check, check.
Hey, so, oh, jeez, that's going to the wrong speaker. Do you hear me back there? Cool. Can I just get you to go over the vocal mic quickly?
Check, check.
And then just give me a quick guitar strum. Could you actually do that again for me, please? Okay, awesome. That sounds great.
believe we're ready.
As I was listening to Adrian pray earlier, I thought it providential that he mentioned Wendy being a gift. Because this song that I'm fixing to play was one I wanted to play in honor of her, and also in honor of my friends, Terry and Bev and Adrian and Ray and Elaine, and a number of other folks with whom I've had a relationship for going on a few decades now. And this song's called Adonity, which means gift. And because I wanted to play it tonight, because even though we seem to forget it a lot, I forget it a lot, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so when you have the opportunity to tell people how much you love them, you should take it, and so that's what I'm doing. Every now and then I think about you, and I can't help but smile at all the things you do. You have been more than a nameless face to me, and I see in you just how the world could be. I can see your soul is full of love and truth, wisdom united with the hopefulness of youth, heart of a warrior yet so tender and mild. Despite the scars, you're still like a child. Once in the darkness, I longed not to exist, but then your beauty is a gift I would have missed. Every now and then I think about you, and I can't help but smile at everything you do. Will you walk with me till our journey's end? Whatever life may hold, it's better shared with friends. Well, thank you very much. These next few songs are off my latest record, which not only can you blame Wendy for my appearance here at NAITS this year. Wendy was a big supporter of my music. She bought a whole bunch of my last record. I'm not sure if it's because she liked the music so much, or if she was thinking if she bought up enough copies, then I would run out and she would spare the rest of y'all the music that I record. If the latter's the case, I didn't have the heart to tell her that I can always make more. But there's a song on my latest record about suffering. Oftentimes when I write songs, I'm not quite sure why I write them, and I only find out afterward. And when I wrote this song, about a month later, I found out a friend of mine that his wife had, out of the blue, filed for divorce. So he was devastated. Not only was his home breaking up, but because his wife he was living in a foreign country with his wife, who was a native of that country, and so their children were citizens of that country, so he was losing access to his children as well. So anyway, he was devastated, and I sent him this song to encourage him that it's okay to grieve, but he really ought not to give up. This is called Let Your Heart. Well, I know it's hard. You can't find the sun, and the long road of sorrows you're on has just begun, and all of your dreams lay crushed at your feet. There's nowhere to turn on this lonely street. Now you know fear in a handful of dust, and all of the beauty is eaten by rust. You get down and pray that each day is your last, but even this aching someday will pass. So let your heart be broken, but don't let your love for life grow cold. Just keep the door wide open, yeah. Don't let your spirit get old. And what you can see depends where you stand, and the power to choose who you are lies in your hands. Now you can surrender your hope, just lay down and die, but no good will come if you don't try. Wide open, yeah. and help a man, you might help yourself. So let your heart be broken. Don't let your love for life grow cold. Just keep the door wide open. Yeah. Don't let your spirit get old. So let your heart be broken. But don't let your love for life grow cold. Just keep the door wide open. Don't let your spirit get old. Don't let your spirit get old. Is Adrian still in here? You are? Adrian is to blame for this next song. Y'all might not know it, but Adrian and I used to work about 5 feet from each other out in South Dakota. And when we were together out there, he turned me on to some Canadian songwriters, people like Bruce Cockburn and Leonard Cohen. And this next song is actually kind of my Leonard Cohen song. So both those songwriters are Canadian, and so y'all should be proud of them. But if you find this song troublesome, blame Adrian. If you like it, you can thank him. But this song's about being broken. The word says that God is close to the brokenhearted. So it's not something to be ashamed of if our hearts are broken, if they're on the ground and we're hurting. And I read somewhere that when those cracks happen in us, that's when the light gets in. So it can be a good thing. And anyway, this song's called Broken. Wonder what comes after all these lonely days and the empty nights. Where's the joy? Where is the laughter? We lost them in the doors and lights. Can you tell me where we go from here? 'Cause the road ahead, well, it's not so clear. 'Cause it's broken, it's all broken. Everything is broken around here. Now I'm broken, I am broken. They say that's when the light appears. There's not a friend to share this woeful highway. no signs to help me to get back home. Just wandering here on this lonely byway. Why must I walk this road alone? Don't know how much longer I can stand. 'Cause this is really nothing like I'd planned. 'Cause it's broken, it's all broken. Everything is broken around here. Now I'm broken, I am broken. They say that's when the light appears. 10 million prayers for help that never came. Leave us caught between the darkness and the flame. It's all broken. Everything is broken around here. Now I'm broken. So where is the light? Now it's broken. It's all broken. Everything is broken around here. Now I'm broken. They say that's when the light appears. Do you ever wonder what comes after all these lonely days and the empty nights? You know, I know that it was that song seems kind of dark, but that's the reality of our lives sometimes. I was reading in The Problem of Pain when C.S. Lewis's wife passed away, and he felt a great deal of pain and felt like he was very much alone. In fact, he kind of complained in the book that God's always there when you don't want him around, but when you desperately needed him, he seemed far away. And I think it's okay to feel that way. You know, Jesus felt that way on the cross. He, on our behalf, he became separated from God and alone. And to the point where he cried out, you know, why have you forsaken me? So it's okay. We just ought not to stay there. But one thing I think that, for me at least, having endured a number of things in my life, one thing that it cured me of is a love for this world and a longing for the next. And so I wrote a song about not being at home in this world anymore and longing for the one to come. And as more of my friends pass on ahead of me, I find myself longing more and more and more and more to be where they are and to where our God is. And that's what this song's about. This is called Across the River. And as I always tell people at this point in a concert, this is a song you've all been waiting for because this is the last one, and then you can all go enjoy the rest of your evening or go to bed early or something like that. I appreciate, Terry, I appreciate you bringing me up here. and let me be with you all this weekend. And I appreciate our friendship. And anyway, this is Across the River.
Once I found this beautiful, I used to love it here. But then I learned the truth of it, and it's not like it appears. But oh, I love that fable, a pretty story, but untrue. It's begun to come undone, now there's nothing we can do. No amount of trying won't change what it's about. No amount of crying will make this all work out. So I'm leaving, I'm going across the river. I'm headed out for the other side. I'm leaving, I'm going across the river. Maybe that will dry the tears I cried. Seems that I've outgrown it here, or has it outgrown me? It's too bright or it's too dark, either way I cannot see. A man needs a refuge, a shelter for his soul, a healing hand to make all of his broken pieces whole. But this has never been any kind of home to me. Can't remember when the last time I was free. So I'm leaving, going across the river. I'm headed out for the other side. I'm leaving, going across the river. Maybe that will dry the tears I cry. Packing up my treasures, few though they may be, leaving in the morning, wherever this road leads. Guess that I'll just say goodbye, or this is the end. And if you want to go with me, well, I sure could use a friend. 'Cause I'm leaving, going across the river. I'm headed out for the other side. I'm leaving, going across the river. Maybe that will dry my tears. 'Cause I'm leaving, going across the river. I'm headed out for the other side. I'm leaving, going across the river. Maybe that will dry the tears I cry. Maybe dry my tears, dry my tears.
Thank you all very much. 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 Thank you all very much.
Well, that's the end of our day, except for some refreshments. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you coming here and honoring our sister Wendy with your music and your presence. Thanks a lot. There's refreshments out back. Before you go, a reminder, tomorrow, 8:30, morning reflection, Ray Mini.